The first one I want to start with is that it is simpler than you are making it out to be. The most exciting outcomes come from the most boring inputs. The idea that 20% of what you do is going to have 80% of the impact. But for many of us, we want the process to be more difficult than it actually has to be. So we overcomplicate it by making it more difficult than it has to be. We go from one task to the next task. We go from one idea to the next idea. We go from one business to the next business. We get so overly consumed with thinking that it has to be more difficult. And so we make it more difficult. And this year, whether it's through the podcast or my coaching business or just overall, the goals that I've wanted to achieve have come from the things that I genuinely probably don't feel like doing. And most of my mornings consume of the boring admin work that I don't feel like doing, but I know that it's going to have the biggest impact on my life. And I've grown more than I have every other year in my life this year by simply doing the things that I know I don't feel like doing first thing in the morning and getting those done out of the way. By 12, noon, 1 o'clock, I'm usually done with my day, or at least I could be done with my day because I got done the tasks that I didn't feel like doing that I know have the biggest impact. And so for your life, think about the 20% of the things that are the boring things that you don't really feel like doing, because I guarantee you those are the exact things that will have the exciting impact on whatever goal you're trying to go towards. Number two is that every opportunity has a third door. Throughout this year, I've gotten some truly profound guests on the show, and I'm more than grateful to have the opportunity to speak with some of the authors that have written the books that are behind me. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're not, go watch it on YouTube because I promise it's worth it. And I've had many people ask me how I've gotten the guests that I've gotten on my show. And what I always go back to is that there is always a way to reach out to the person you want to reach out to. There's always a way to connect with the people that you want to connect to. And I'm going to talk about the power of proximity later on in this podcast, but I think it's important to understand that there's the first door that people walk through, that it's real crowded. And then there's the back door that's also a little bit crowded. There's going to be some people there. But then there's always a side door that most people don't think about or don't even know about. And throughout the podcast, with connecting with great people, that's usually how I've gotten to connect with most of the people I've been able to connect with, is I'm always trying to find the third door, whether that's going through Instagram DMs or emails or reaching out to an assistant or finding someone that I've had on the show that has a connection with another person I want to get on the show. I think in every opportunity that you want to create in life, you just have to find the people that are around the person that you want to get around, or you have to find the opportunity, the third door that you may not even know about, that I guarantee you will change the way that you live your life. And this comes from a book called The Third Door by Alex Benayan that I definitely will have on the show in the future. I spoke about this with Danielle Robay as well. And I think it's so important to think about this in every aspect of your life, because if you think that you want an opportunity, you want to go towards said goal, but you feel that there's no path for you to get there, you have to understand that the path that you're looking at just may not be the path, but there is always a third door there. And every opportunity that you want to step into or you want to create in your life, there is a third door. So don't give up on the opportunity just because the first path didn't work or the second path didn't work. But there's always an alternative way to get to where you want to go, whether it's getting a guest on your podcast or getting an opportunity that you didn't know was there. I've had more opportunities come in my life this year more than ever, simply because I'm always trying to find the third door and put myself in positions to succeed. And I think it's important to think of that in every aspect of your life. So rather than going the first door that everyone's going in or the back door that everyone's going in, think about the third door in your life or the opportunities that you want to create in your life, because I guarantee you there always is one if you're willing enough to take enough action to find it. Another one is that we all experience hedonic adaptation. I spoke about this with Dr. Cassie Holmes on my podcast, which was an amazing podcast that we spoke about how most people get to a point in life where we believe as though the next goal that we want to get to or the next accomplishment that we want to achieve is what we are looking for. And then once we get there after a few months, that enjoyment, that enthusiasm, that excitement that we had for that goal starts to dissipate, because we are humans that always want to evolve. We always want the next thing. So say you want to get to $100,000 a year, and then you get there and you think that that was everything that you were looking for. And after a few months, it becomes normal to you. That's what hedonic adaptation is that after we achieve something, it ends up becoming normal to us. A way of living becomes normal to us. When I first stepped into entrepreneurship, it was really uncomfortable. And I knew that that was the path I wanted to go down. And it was terrifying for me in the beginning. And it was everything that I was looking for when I stepped into it. And I thought that that was going to be everything. And then over a year now of being full-time into entrepreneurship, it's become normal to me. And now there's just the next level that I want to get to. And so rather than looking at your goal on a pedestal of this is the thing that I want to accomplish, recognize that the beginning of or the end of one path is always the beginning to another. And so whatever you want to accomplish in life, it's a lot more important to optimize for enjoyment than it is to optimize for progress. Because when we're always optimizing for progress, we are always going to continue to move the goalpost. Regardless, we're going to continue to move the goalpost. And so just knowing that hedonic adaptation is a thing, whether it comes to the income that we want to create or the people that we want to be surrounded by, everything becomes normal after we are around it for a long enough period of time. And so I think it's important to put this into perspective in your life. If you're not where you'd like to be, recognize that when you get to where you'd like to be, it will become normal to you eventually. And then there's always going to be another place that you want to get to. So enjoy where you are, because there's always going to be a further goal that you want to accomplish or more that you can do in your life. Another is that discipline should be a practice and not a punishment. I love the way that Connor Beaton spoke about this on our podcast. We spoke a lot about trauma and shadow work and a lot of other things that I absolutely love to speak about. His book was a great book that I read this year, probably one of my favorites. And I think it's important to put this into perspective because you cannot hate yourself into change. For many of us, we're working out of a plate of resentment, guilt, shame, and we go to the gym because we don't like the way we look rather than because we want to set ourselves up for success or because we love ourselves enough to actually do it. And so in the areas of your life that you want to improve, that you're coming out of a place of resentment from, I think it's important to put into perspective that the discipline that you want to put into your life because you want to become a more disciplined person, you want to create more opportunities in your life, will come once you come from a place of love instead of shame. And I think that that's the sustainable route to actually showing up for yourself for a long enough period of time to actually sustain the life that you want to create for yourself, whether it's going to the gym or creating a business or surrounding yourself with people that support you. It is really important to come from a place of love instead of shame, because that is what is going to last long term. It is simple as he put it, is that discipline should be a practice, not a punishment, because it's when it's a punishment, you are not going to reward yourself to show up the next time. It might work for a short enough period of time, but it definitely won't last. So the next one is a two-part, and it's going to be a little bit counterintuitive, but I think it's important to put into perspective in multiple different areas of your life. The first is that you shouldn't sweat the small stuff. My car this year has been a very difficult thing that has been going on. I've had a lot of issues with my car this year, and I invested about $1,300 to get it fixed. The next day, it was broken again. And my automatic response was to be pissed, to be very frustrated with what just happened. I just invested a lot of money to get it fixed. I thought it was going to come back fixed, and then it was broken the next day. I'm still figuring that out. But I think it's important to not sweat the small stuff because I know that in 5 years from now, it's not going to matter. Even 5 months from now, 5 weeks from now, it won't matter. And I'm not going to inflict suffering on myself just because things didn't work out exactly as I thought they would or as I wanted them to be. Because happiness is simply reality minus expectations. I expected that it was going to come out perfect. It didn't work that way. And my happiness, I'm not going to let my happiness decrease simply because my expectations weren't met. I talked about this with Brad Stolberg on my podcast, which was also a great conversation that you should definitely listen to because he broke down a lot of equations when it comes to that happiness and suffering, a lot of those kind of mindsets that are, again, simpler than they seem to be because we feel the need to be more difficult. And so the idea to not sweat the small stuff in every area of your life, there's going to be a lot of mishaps and things that don't go your way throughout your year and throughout your life, but you shouldn't sweat them because if it's not going to matter in 5 weeks from now, why inflict suffering on yourself on top of the situation that is already not great? And so not sweating the small stuff is great. But then there's the other aspect of it where you should sweat the small stuff because when you wake up in the morning and you hit the snooze button, you think, I'm not going to sweat the small stuff. It's not a big deal that I hit the snooze button today, but that's a trickle down effect into the rest of your day. Well, you should sweat the small stuff because the small things that people don't think about are the big things in the long run. In your lifetime, there is going to be a few big moments in your life, graduating high school, graduating college if you go, getting that first job that you want to create, getting the first home, whatever that looks like. There's going to be a few moments in your life that are big moments. But all the small moments, all the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis, I bet you couldn't even count how many decisions you make on a day-to-day basis. And so you should sweat the small stuff. You should sweat the way that you show up for yourself on a day-to-day basis and not from a place of guilting yourself into having to show up for absolutely everything, but at least holding a standard for yourself so that you can create a better future for yourself. So sweat the small stuff on a day-to-day basis on the small decisions, but don't sweat the small stuff on the things that you simply cannot control. Another is to, and this is one that has been really sitting with me throughout this year and really is going to help me propel into 2024 and how I want to think about that year, is that to play to win instead of playing not to lose. For most of my life, I was playing not to lose. I was playing safe. And I think there's moments in my life where it was different, where I invested into a coaching program, didn't know how I was going to work it out. And I played to win there. But there's been many moments in my life where I played not to lose and I played safe. I took the comfortable route, you could say. And I think for many of us, we do that, where we feel as though there needs to be some kind of certainty along this journey. And for any journey that is worth going down, it's going to be very uncertain because There's a real big difference between being interested in something and being committed in something. And when I first invested into the coaching program I joined to become a coach in itself, I was committed. And before that, I was interested in starting a podcast and maybe helping people on social media, but I didn't know what that looked like. And it wasn't until I invested into myself that I put skin in the game and I recognized that there's no way around this. Now I invested, I have to make my investment worth it. I put money down and now I have to figure out a way to make this worth the investment that I made. And so there's a big difference between interested and being committed in something. And I've seen this definitely within clients this year is that when they start working with me, they're fully committed. Before they were interested, they want to make a change, but they didn't show their actions didn't reflect the change that they wanted to make. And so in your life, if you want to make a change in your life, but you're interested in it and you're not really seeing the change that you want to make, you really have to reflect and be honest with yourself because change only comes from you being honest with yourself about, am I interested in this or am I committed in this? And Danielle Robay, we had a conversation about this and how she wanted to become a journalist and she knew that growing up in Chicago, it wasn't going to work out that way. And so she moved to LA and lived in a garage for a couple months and she bet on herself. She was committed to making it happen. She didn't really have any money in her bank account and she forced herself to put herself in a position to make it happen. And so what I've seen a common thread of really most people that I've spoken with on the podcast is that they've put themselves in a position to only have this path. There is only one way that this is going to work out, and it's just going to work out. And so in your life, if you want to make a change, you have to be honest with yourself. Am I interested in this or am I committed to this? And your actions will reflect what that truth is. And you can't lie to yourself. This podcast is kindly brought to you by Magic Mind. Now, if you're anything like me, you love coffee, but you hate the jitters that it gives you in that 2 p.m. slump in the afternoon when you still have a lot of day left, but you're not able to be focused throughout that time. And this is why I love Magic Mind. I've been taking it with my morning coffee. It's a small productivity shot that I absolutely love. It's with matcha, which takes longer to release in your body. So instead of feeling slumped at 2 p.m., you actually have that intentional focus and it reduces stress. So I take it with my morning coffee. It helps me drink less coffee, but actually feel focused and not wired throughout the day, which is so impactful because if you're a podcaster or you're taking calls or you're just in general, you need to be focused and have that mental energy. It's been something that's really helpful for me. I've been using it for a few weeks and I guarantee that you will like it. So if you're anything like me and you want to feel focused but not wired, you can go to magicmind.com/youcan2 for 56% off. Yes, 56% off your first subscription. And for your first one-time payment, you can get 20% off, which is insane to say the least because they have a 100% money back guarantee with no questions asked. And instead of waiting 3 to 5 days for that money back, they'll refund you in 3 to 4 hours because they believe in it. And I believe in it so much. So that's magicmind.com/youcan2 for up to 56% off your first subscription. And if you already use Magic Mind, you can get a discount off your next subscription payment as well. So it's magicmind.com/youcan2. Try it for a few weeks, see if you like it. I bet you that you will, and you will feel a lot more intentional with your day instead of just so wired and really just exhausted by the end of the day. Back to the episode. Another one is one that I really love, and I think you'll resonate with for sure, is that life is about the anticipation, not the achievement. As humans, we want to achieve. We want growth. We want expansion in our lives. But dopamine is not about the pursuit of happiness. It's about the happiness of pursuit. I think of Gary Vee when I put this into perspective, is that he wants to buy the Jets. And for many people that follow Gary Vee, you know that he doesn't really want to buy the Jets. He likes the anticipation of buying the Jets. He likes the idea, the striving to buy the Jets, but not the actual accomplishment of buying the Jets. Because once he buys the Jets, then he doesn't have to buy the Jets anymore. There's no thing in the future that he's excited to go towards. And so in your life, what is something that you want to move towards that you just feel as though your happiness, your contentment, your excitement, your enjoyment is relying on you achieving that thing? What if it could be that the actual actions that you take to achieve it is where your enjoyment comes from? And I've realized this with the podcast. I started this in my car. Now I'm speaking with entrepreneurs through the podcast. And I know a year ago when I first thought about speaking with people, I wasn't relying my happiness and my enjoyment on speaking with people because I knew it was inevitable. And so in your life, if you believe that it's going to happen and that there's no other path for you, it's not about it if it's going to happen, it's more so when it's going to happen, well, then you're going to enjoy the process of achieving more than the actual achievement. And that's what all of life is the process of achieving, not actually achieving it. And so I think it's important to put this into perspective because when you get to the end of your life, you're going to wish that you smelled the roses more. You're going to wish that you were more present in the process of life in itself. That's the whole purpose of life, is to enjoy the passage of time. And if you're only placing your happiness, your enjoyment, your contentment on achieving said goal, well, you're never going to really enjoy what life is. And that's the day-to-day in between days. Case Kenny spoke about this on the podcast as well. There's going to be only a few moments in your life where they're big moments in your life. but there's going to be a lot of small moments in your life on a day-to-day basis that you don't take into account. You don't give yourself enough credit. You don't give yourself enough presence to actually enjoy the in-between days of the boring work, the doing the recordings of this. Instead of thinking about doing an in-person interview, I'm being present in recording this solo episode and reflecting on this past year. And so in your life, think about the in-between days and do a little bit better at really enjoying the in-between days. Recognize that the life is about the anticipation of achieving, not the actual achievement in itself. And I think that you'll find a lot more joy and a lot more peace in your life when you recognize that. Another is that you have to feed into what you feel compelled to go towards. I spoke with Mark Sisson about this on my podcast. He sold Primal Kitchen for about $200 million. And he wrote a book, a New York Times bestselling book. And doing my research for him, I found out that he didn't like writing. And so I asked him, how were you able to show up enough times to actually write a New York Times bestselling book if you didn't enjoy writing? And his answer was simple. I felt compelled to do it. I felt compelled. I felt compelled to solve a problem that I seen in the world. In every business that he started, he felt compelled to go towards. And I think for many of us, we suppress our intuition because we feel as though there's the fear there. There's the hesitation there. There is the imposter syndrome there. There's all of the fears that show up in our life that withhold us from going towards what we feel compelled to go towards. I've said this many times with this podcast. I felt compelled. I felt pulled to go towards this podcast, to speak my truth, to speak to entrepreneurs, to speak to authors, to just put this out into the world. And the only reason I've been able to stay consistent in it is because I felt compelled to go towards it. And I don't think that'll ever go away. And the whole process is what I enjoy, is speaking with an entrepreneur each and every single week. It's doing these solo episodes again. And I think that the enjoyment in itself comes from what I feel compelled to go towards. It's not selling my business, or as Mark Sisson would say, it's not about selling the business for $200 million, but it's about the process of building something that solves a problem. And so in your life, the question, what do I want to be when I grow up, isn't really helpful, but what do I feel compelled to go towards might allow your intuition to be a little bit louder instead of a small voice in your mind that you can't really tell if it's fear or if it's intuition, but really going towards a thing that you feel compelled to go towards, solving the problem that you feel needs to be solved in the world. And I guarantee you that the way you live your life will change when you start going towards the things that you feel compelled towards, and stop placing this idea on this needs to be a certain path, life needs to be more certain, and just going towards what you feel compelled to go towards. Your life will be so much more exciting, and you'll find a lot more fulfillment in life when you go towards the things that you feel compelled to go towards. Another one is that you have to define what good enough looks like. If you're a perfectionist, this one's big. And I spoke with this about Seth Godin on the podcast, is that if you never release things into the world, you are simply using perfectionism as procrastination. You're just simply getting in your own way because you never define what good enough looks like for you. And I think this is important because as a 21 international bestselling author, he has released a lot into this world. And for many of us, we can't even release the first thing that we want to release into the world. And that's simply because we have too high of expectations, too high of standards for ourselves, that we never allow ourselves to actually put out things into the world. And I realized this when I started my podcast and my Instagram page. When I first became a coach, I knew that the most difficult part for me was just getting on social media and allowing myself to put out things that I felt uncomfortable and really scared to put out into the world because I didn't know who I was at the time. I didn't have a voice in the world. I didn't really know what kind of mission I wanted to leave onto the world, but I know I had things to say. And what really helped me was releasing every single day. No matter what happened, I was releasing a video on social media to reinforce the habit of showing up every single day. And I think it's really important to define what good enough looks like for you, because if you never do, whether it's releasing music or posting on social media or just putting yourself out into the world, allowing yourself to define what good enough looks like for you will allow you to release more into the world and ultimately create more opportunity for yourself. And I think this is really important. It was a great conversation. There's so much more that we got from that conversation, but that was one thing that I really took away, is defining what good enough even looks like for you. Because if you never do, well, you'll never release anything. You'll never put out anything into the world, and you do a disservice by not bringing your unique gifts into the world. There's only one of you, and only you can bring what you can bring into the world. And if you never do that, well, why are you here? This has to be one of my favorite conversations from 2023, and it was with Derek Sivers. And I think he's writing a book on this right now. And it's that beliefs have to be useful for you. They don't necessarily have to be true. And I'll put this into perspective. I grew up an unconfident person. I at least seen myself as an unconfident person growing up. And so I acted in accordance to what I perceived myself to be. It wasn't useful for me, but it may have been true at the time. And it wasn't until I took on the belief that I could become a confident person that I started acting as though I was a confident person. I believed it was useful for me. It wasn't necessarily true in the beginning, but the belief that I could be confident was the exact thing that allowed my behavior to reinforce what a confident person would look like. showing up on social media, releasing podcast episodes, doing the things that I know a confident person would do. And taking on the belief that I could become a confident person gave me the permission to act as though I was a confident person. And in that, reinforce the confident idea of myself that I now hold in my mind. And I think for you in your life, take on beliefs that are useful for you. They don't necessarily need to be true, because eventually, if you give yourself enough evidence to reinforce it, it will become true. But you first have to take on the belief for your behavior to reflect the reality that you want. Another one was a conversation I had with Kyle Cease, which was profound to say the least. Definitely one of the most viewed episodes that I had this year. And it was that whatever you justify, you have to let go of. Whatever you are trying to make sense of why you are keeping it in your life, you need to let go of it. Whether it's a relationship, a job that you have, whatever it looks like. If you are trying to justify it, you are going against yourself. And I think this is really important to put into perspective, because you cannot lie to yourself. And if there is this internal pull of, I want to do this, but I feel like this is the path I need to be going down, or I'm supposed to be going down, or I've done this for so long, so I should keep this, you're justifying it. Well, you need to let loose. You have to let go of what you have to make room for what can become. And that is going to require you to really stop justifying the life that you have been creating to open up space for the life that you are able to create. Whether that's a relationship, whatever that comes down to, whatever you are justifying, really put into perspective. Am I justifying this because it's supporting me, or am I justifying this because this is what has been, and this is what I feel needs to be in my future? And really putting that into perspective, because anything that you are justifying, you probably need to let go of. Another one is that you have to play your own games. A lot of the time we are taught that we want certain things. And what's important to put into perspective here is that you are living your own journey, right? So the things that other people want in life aren't exactly the things that you might want in life. I had a conversation with Eric Jorgensen about this a little bit, where he's not setting goals for 2024. He is already an ambitious person. He's already going to be moving towards where he'd like to be, but he's not exactly setting metrics or goals that he wants to achieve, because he's already going to be moving in that direction. Because usually what goals are is just us attaching our self-worth to, okay, if I achieve that, then I'll be enough. If I achieve that, then this year will be a success. But what if your year could be a success just based on the actions that you took instead of the results that you had? And I think this is important to put into perspective, because many of us are living by what we feel we are supposed to want rather than what we actually want. And if we never recognize that we're playing someone else's game, well, there's no way we can win that game. And we will be chasing for most of our life. So I think it's important to really take inventory of, where are you going? And is that actually where you want to go? Or is that where you feel you're supposed to go? And that's a massive distinction. Another that continues to stay, and I will probably make this a lesson every single year, is that proximity is power. When I was 17, I invested into a coaching program. I knew I wanted to become a coach. I didn't know what that looked like. I had to be surrounded by people that were doing what I wanted to do to prove to myself that it was a possibility. Ken Coleman, I had a conversation with him earlier this year, and he spoke on this. He even wrote a book on the power of proximity. And I think it's so important to put this into perspective, because think of it like this. If you want to make $1 million a year, but you conceptually in your mind don't believe that that is even a possibility, well, then your behavior is going to reflect that. But if you were around people that are making $1 million, $10 million, $20 million a year, it is going to prove to you that that belief is just not reality. It is your reality. It's your current reality. But when you surround yourself with people that are doing that, your beliefs will change about what is possible, and your behavior will reflect what is possible. And so through this podcast, I've spoken with people that have sold their business for $200 million, that have been in business for 2 decades plus, have achieved things that I didn't think was possible just a few years ago. And it reinforces why I started this podcast. The You Can Too podcast was to help you unlearn the beliefs that hold you back by bringing in stories from people that have done extraordinary things, that started maybe at a position that you're at, or maybe even less. I think it's so important to really think about this in your life. Are you surrounding yourself with people that are going in the direction that you want to go in? Or are you surrounding yourself with people that make you feel like you are already ahead? Because you should never be the smartest person in the room. You should never be the person that knows everything in the room. You should be the stupidest person in the room. You should be the person that wants to learn the most. You should not be the one speaking the most. You should be one that listening the most, because that's how you really get ahead in life. And I think this has just continued to reinforce in my life, because I've spoken with more people than I have ever this year through the podcast, and it's only going to continue. And from speaking with those people, being in proximity with those people, it continues to put into my mind why I should think bigger and play to win instead of playing not to lose, because I'm seeing it again and again that is a possibility. And so for you in your life, just surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do, or at least that are moving in the direction that you want to be moving in, because your beliefs about what is possible in the world will change dramatically. And the last one is that when you chase, you repel. The most shared podcast of this year was a solo episode that I did, and it's that detachment drives achievement. And I think it resonated with a lot of people because many of us put our goals on a pedestal. We see that next level of life, that next job, that next amount of income that I want to create for ourselves is on a pedestal in life. And so we always see ourselves as a person that can almost get there. Not yet, but can almost get there. And so we always push it away. We always keep our goals an arm's length away because we don't believe we are the kind of person that can create that goal. And so if you're a workaholic like me or the people that I work with, it is really easy to always be in constant movement, always trying to be achieving something. And when you're in that state, you come from a place of scarcity instead of abundance. And you don't believe that the world is abundant. You don't believe that there is success for everyone out there. You don't believe that success is possible for you. And I think it's really important to understand that when you chase things, you repel the exact things that you are chasing. And sometimes the most productive thing that you can do is stop trying to be so productive. And so putting this into perspective in your own life, instead of trying to just always press on the gas pedal, recognize that sometimes pressing on the brake will allow you to actually change course and move in the direction that you're supposed to be going in, because maybe the direction that you're going in isn't the direction that you need to be going in. Maybe it's just a little bit of a turn, a few tweaks that you need to make that will actually allow you to progress a hell of a lot faster. But that's going to require you to step on the brake. These were just a few. I feel like I could have done 1,000 more lessons I learned from this year, and I'm truly grateful for this podcast, this year. I'm so grateful, and I'm so excited for what next year is going to bring. If you want any more videos like this, leave a comment below, share this on your stories. I truly appreciate you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.